It's Monday, February 14, 2022. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gill. A new Disabilities Act takes effect today. The groundbreaking legislation aims to ensure the full and effective participation of persons with disabilities in the society, and it is in keeping with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It was passed in Parliament in October 2014 and the regulations affirmed by the House of Representatives in October 2021. Speaking on PBCJ's program A Different Life on Sunday, Senator Floyd Morris said access to employment remains a major challenge for persons with disabilities. Senator Morris, who's also director of the Center for Disability Studies at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, also said the current education infrastructure was not accommodative of the needs of the disabled community. The program is hosted by Dr. Christine Hendricks.
I'm very much concerned about our educational infrastructure and how accessible and inclusive it is for persons with disabilities. And then when persons with disabilities do get into the educational space and get an education, how responsive are we to them in terms of generating employment for them? I mean, I've known of individuals with disabilities who have gone through the challenges of getting a university education, but upon graduating, they just can't get a job, and you have them finding menial tasks to do, you know. And any society that is progressive is going to make sure that they cater to all the different groups within their society.
Senator Morris supports the efforts to strengthen the legislative framework governing persons with disabilities.
Well, most definitely we'll have to put in place legislative measures to ensure that the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities are protected. And then we have to engage in what I regard as a consistent, sustained public education campaign. I tell people that we have had over 500 years of negative socialization towards persons with disabilities. That sort of socialization is not going to change in a 6-month campaign. It has to be sustained.
Currently, there are some 500,000 Jamaicans living with disabilities, but officials are concerned that less than 40,000 are registered with the Jamaica Council of Persons with Disabilities. Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson is warning that there will be no letting up on crime. In fact, he says local law enforcement authorities are determined to reduce the number of illegal firearms on the streets of Jamaica and to ensure that all citizens feel safe. He was addressing the launch of a joint anti-gang task force consisting of members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the Jamaica Defense Force.
We are going to take back these guns that are out there. We're going to put a large dent in this firearms business in Jamaica. 91% of our deaths or murders this year have been done with an illegal firearm. And we are determined that we will recover these or seize them, but also, more importantly, the persons who are doing this. And we have seen these people operate, and sometimes our public don't really get to see the end result of their work, which we see a lot of.
The police commissioner says the task force, which has been operational for a week, is proving to be effective.
We have seized 7 illegal firearms, 1,200 pounds of compressed ganja. We have disrupted a illegal alcohol operation that was funding a particular gang, and we have arrested 4 persons for lottery scamming and another 16 of them to make a total of 20 persons who are involved in violence and crime.
Meanwhile, head of the JDF, Rear Admiral Wemyss Gorman, says the task force will focus specifically on gangs. It also seeks to achieve a positive turnaround in the lives of Jamaican youth.
The JDF, as the Commissioner of Police said, will bring dynamic and flexible military expertise to this task force, ensuring joint intelligence and the securing of the spaces in which we engage. This will allow the JCF to focus on the pursuit of gangs and the apprehension of their members who terrorize communities. The JDF's assessment is that the youth are featured prominently in the expansion of gangs and gang activity in communities. This is why we are seeking to strengthen our own youth engagement efforts to provide an alternative and positive action path in society for youth to prevent them from being pulled into gangs.
The Rear Admiral informed those in attendance at Friday's launch that the military personnel engaged in the task force are trained in human rights.
We will ensure that the rights of each citizen is respected whilst these operations are being conducted. However, if faced with a threat, the appropriate actions will be taken to defend themselves.
Jamaica recorded about 473 road deaths in 2021, 433 in 2020, and 440 in 2019. Some of those deaths involved children. The government has established a Safe Passage project. It's an intervention to support the safe commute of Jamaican children to and from school. The Salt Spring Safe Passage project at Salt Spring Primary School in St. James was launched recently. The project, which falls under JCIF's Integrated Community Development Project 2, began in 2021 with help from the World Bank and the European Union.
And building on the success of Phase 1, the Safe Passages project is now being implemented under the Government of Jamaica's ICDP 2 project in 5 communities: Salt Spring and Anchovy in St. James, Treadlight in Clarendon, Greenwich Town in Kingston, and August Town in St. Andrew.
Deputy Superintendent of Police St. James, Angela McIntosh Gale, says the government's $14 million Safe Passage project will be instrumental in saving lives. The project contains several components, including the rehabilitation and construction of sidewalks, bus bays, guardrails, road signs, as well as comprehensive public education and road safety programs to include staff, students, and residents.
The police and citizens do welcome the Safe Passage project. This project is not only beneficial to our youngsters, but by extension, the community.
Head of the EU delegation to Jamaica, Her Excellency Maria Van Steen, says some of these communities are targeted in the EU's Citizen Security Programme for financial year 2021-2022.
Let me tell you that indeed when we help the government to implement the Citizen Security Plan to make sure that children can go from the 2 places in their life which should be, where they should be safest, between home and school, one cannot say that that is not contributing to citizen security and to their well-being. So I'm extremely happy to see that we have included interventions like this in our support. It is not just a road safety project, it's a community project where everyone gets involved.
DSP McIntosh Gale wants more Jamaicans to get involved in the program.
It is my hope that this Safe Passage project will attract other stakeholders to build on this foundation.
In this extended business report, we get our usual market updates and information about the Students' Loan Bureau in Finance Matters.
In foreign exchange trading for Friday, February 11, the US dollar sold for an average $157.93. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $124.65. The pound sterling traded for $210.93, and the euro sold for an average $180.85. In Friday's trading session, the following reflect the movement of the JSE indices. The JSE index advanced by 4,816 points to close at just over 400,000 units. The junior market index advanced by 5 points to close at over 4,000 units. The combined market index advanced by 4,561 points to close at over 400,000 units, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 2,416 points to close at over 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 108 stocks, of which 57 advanced, 38 declined, and 13 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Variable Preference, and Access Financial Services Limited. Stocks declined for 1834 Investments Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Barita Investments Limited. Trading firm were CAC 2000 9.5% preference shares, Carreras Limited, and First Rock Capital Holdings Limited USD. Tropical Battery Company Limited was the volume leader with over 4.5 million units, followed by Future Energy Source Company Limited ordinary shares with just over 4 million units, and Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial with over 3.2 million units. In market data for oil, prices eased on Monday after earlier hitting its highest in more than 7 years as Ukraine hinted at possible concessions to Russia that could alleviate tensions between the two countries that Western governments say are on the brink of war. Brent crude was down 81 cents or 0.9% at $93.63 a barrel, off an earlier peak of $96.16, the highest since October 2014. West Texas Intermediate crude futures fell 83 cents or 0.9% to $92.27 a barrel after hitting $94.94, the loftiest since September 2014. For the last 50 years, the Student Loan Bureau has operated as Jamaica's premier student loan financing organization. It ensures that qualified needy Jamaican students have equal access to financial assistance to pursue tertiary education. In excess of 10,000 people apply for loans annually, and on average 99% of these are successful in accessing an SLB loan. In this episode of Finance Matters, host Daniel Pasley speaks with the SLB's Executive Director Nikisha Walsh about how the Bureau is making it easier for Jamaicans to access tertiary education.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, recently, the Students' Loan Bureau has celebrated something monumental. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, the student loan is celebrating 50 years in existence, and so far in 50 years, we have issued over $51 billion in loans to approximately 340,000 students. So
$51 billion to
$51 billion.
Over 340,000 students?
Yes, that is correct.
Wow. How is the Students' Loan Bureau making it easier for current and prospective students to access loan support?
Currently, students can access our website and apply through our portal, where you will get a response within 48 hours. This is a pre-approval to tell you that you are qualified for a loan. Thereafter, you'll get an email to tell you what are the documents that you need to submit. Since COVID, we recognize that persons cannot come to the office to drop off their documents. So what we have done, we have partnered with 3 ATIs, which is University of the West Indies, University of Technology, and NCU. You can drop off your information at those colleges and they will submit it to us. Also, we have a Dropbox facility in the office, so you can put it in our pre-envelope and you can drop it off, where we will call you and tell you that your loan has been applied and you can now come in and sign the promissory note. So we are looking at ways where you don't have to actually travel to the office. Yeah. So we are currently developing a system, a new loan management system that will have our applicants, our students, not just apply, but also upload your
Okay.
documents, and we have partnered with the university, so we will get the information directly from them through their portal in terms of confirmation that they're confirming the university, and also their information on their status. So if you're a returning student, we will want to know what is your current GPA, and because you have to have a minimum GPA in terms of to apply for a return
So what
student.
is the minimum GPA?
The minimum GPA is 1.5. So we need to ensure that you are current and you are in college before you can get your second semester loan or your second term loan. So instead of you bringing in your GPA, we are using the portal through the ATIs to access those information. So we want it to become easy. You stay at your home, you apply, you upload your documents, we validate the information, and then you can come in and sign your promissory note without making a trip more than once.
So do you still need more than one guarantor?
No, since this financial year, you are only allowed to have one guarantor. We assess our risk and we recognize that, moving forward to assist persons in terms of getting all the documentation together, we are just accepting one. And that was announced by our minister this financial year.
So we're in this challenging period of COVID-19. How has the trends been like for persons who are applying for student loans for the last year?
Oh, I'm happy for that question. Last year, we saw a 4.5 increase in applications. We recognize that pandemic, it's new. Persons weren't having the opportunity to go overseas to do the work and study program. We saw where parents are no longer employed because of the fallout in the economy.
Yeah.
So persons now access our benefits. So we're happy for that 4.5 increase, and we want to make sure that our facilities open and enough funds to access even more persons.
And I saw in the news about the Jumpstart program. I see that's an exciting initiative
Yes,
being
it
launched
is.
by SLB.
Yes,
Could you
it
tell
is.
us more about that?
Well, we recognize that outside of the loan facility, there are some programs that are above our limit. So student loan maximum for our loan is $1 million. And there are some programs, and there are some persons, not just tuition needs, but school-related expense.
Yeah.
So our Jumpstart scholarship is valued at $300,000 each for 10 lucky students. So to apply for that, you would need to go online, submit your application, and there is a financial need assessment that to see if you fall in the category of needy students. So that is a one-off scholarship for only persons entering in their first year.
Only in their first year.
Yes, it's a jump start into college. So we want you to, be able to go to college and pay for other school-related expenses. And that is how we feel like we want to give back, especially at this juncture in our 50 years.
Wow, great initiative. Now,
Thanks.
how can persons access more information?
You can go to our website, www.slbja.com, or you can also come into our office and collect the application form, or you can send us an email at info@slb.com, and you can also follow us at Student Loan Bureau on the other social media handles.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh, for coming on the program and sharing some pertinent information about the new developments happening at the Students' Loan Bureau.
Thank you for having me.
And on that note, we close this Monday edition of the Business Report inside the news on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson. Pleasant viewing.
In regional news, we return to Guyana, where the central bank has announced through the National Gazette that a new $2,000 note will go into circulation on Monday.
In the notice, the central bank explained that a new note, which has legal tender for the payment of any amount, carries the slogan "One Guyana" on one side, while featuring the faces of children to represent the 6 ethnic groups of Guyana. There's a YY pattern on the left side of the note, with the same pattern and the nation's motto on the right side. There are also a number of security features, and the note carries the signature of the Vice President, Barra Jagdeo. Usually, local currency notes carry the signature of the Minister of Finance and the Governor of the Bank of Guyana. There is no substantive Minister of Finance, but rather a Senior Minister of Finance in the Office of the President.
In the Bahamas, most Grand Bahama and Family Island schools are ready to reopen for face-to-face instruction, but issues of space and manpower continue to plague mostly Providence schools. More from Christina Dragovich.
Obviously, large class sizes and teacher shortages are clearly impediments to increasing the numbers of students for face-to-face and or 100% return in the midst of this COVID pandemic.
That according to Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson, who says some issues run deep. She adds the reopening plans for each school will be determined on a case-by-case basis.
Find alternative venue for additional class spaces, utilize retirees and supply teachers, and find volunteers, parents, guardians, persons in the community who can supplement for the teacher shortage.
Wilson says that will be a stopgap measure. There are teachers who have been waiting since May 2021 to be hired. She adds that an education plan will go a long way to outline the way forward. Meanwhile, some schools on the Family Islands are facing challenges of their own.
Unfortunately, there are a few schools in Grand Bahama and several schools on Family Islands who are not ready to resume face-to-face for various reasons, ranging from teacher shortages, insufficient classroom space, and lack of furniture, desks, and chairs.
Some Family Island schools with populations lower than 100 have already resumed face-to-face learning about a week ago. Reporting for our news, I'm Christina Dragovich.
In Guyana, while government has lifted the coronavirus curfew in that country, a number of restrictions remain in place for social events. Gordon Mosley reports.
According to the updated COVID-19 guidelines which were published today, citizens are still prohibited from hosting, promoting, and attending private parties. Under the same regulations, citizens are also prohibited from attending clubs and discos and water parks. And there are still restrictions on the hosting of wakes and vigils and other social gathering events. However, the guidelines allow for bars, restaurants, casinos, and other gambling houses to continue to operate, although patrons should be fully vaccinated and those facilities should not operate at full capacity. Today, the National COVID-19 Task Force also lifted the restrictions on the opening of pools. In the updated guidelines, pools are now allowed to reopen, but at 50% of the capacity, while visits to creeks and rivers for social events remain prohibited.
In lighter news, we head to Trinidad and Tobago, where one local florist and a gardener are encouraging those struck by Cupid's arrow on Valentine's Day to consider arrangements of local flowers to give to loved ones. Crystal Wilson has more in this report.
It's February 13th, and if you aren't certain, it's almost that time again. And one local florist told TTT News it's a busy period for her. This as she handles the demands of orders for flowers as gifts for customers' loved ones on Valentine's Day. Rihanna Chan of Ajupa Gardens says while she's a lover of all flowers, she's encouraging everyone to embrace the beauty of what is available locally.
A lot of people like to buy roses for Valentine's. These are imported from Kenya, Ecuador, Colombia, and these are grown in conditions that are unethical oftentimes. So when you support from your local flower farms, not only is it grown from nearby, so your carbon footprint is lower, but you actually know who's growing it, who's assembling it, and we can actually make it a lot more special.
Rihanna specializes in bouquets, which include the use of flowers grown without the use of pesticides and fertilizers. Her supplies come from gardener Earl Rahman Norona of Wasamaki Ecosystems. The flowers are grown organically on a 30-acre farm located at Freeport. Mr. Norona says a lot of work goes into keeping the flowers healthy.
A lot of what we do to keep the soil healthy is we keep returning all the leaves as soon as we cut them back into the beds. So wherever you see in the beds, there's no exposed soil really, because we just keep recycling all the organic matter back in.
Rihanna says people should be encouraged to give local flowers as gifts because of their beauty, and added it's also good for the country.
Everyone who receives a flower, it's very special. Not only is it beautiful, it's sentimental, it tells your loved ones that you actually care, and most of all you can support the local economy, so the farmers.
If you're interested in placing an order for that special someone, you can feel free to contact Rihanna at ajubagardens@gmail.com.
In sports, we're on the pitch with cricket. Head coach Phil Simmons conceded Friday that West Indies' frail batting required urgent attention after the Caribbean side were whitewashed by India following a 96-run defeat in the final one-day international. West Indies failed to reach 200 in any of the three matches at the Narendra Modi Stadium, dismissed for 176, 193 and 169 with all-rounder Jason Holder, the only player to notch a half-century. The result comes on the back of a shock series loss to Ireland in Jamaica last month, where the Windies' batting was against at fault in the three matches at Sabina Park. While stressing that technique was not an issue, Simmons pointed to a lack of situational awareness and the manner of dismissals as the major stumbling blocks for his batsmen. The Confederation of North, Central America and Caribbean Association Football, CONCACAF, has introduced an appeals system for direct red cards for its senior competitions, starting with the 2022 Scotiabank CONCACAF Champions League, which begins this week. Participating teams will now have the opportunity to post-match to request a review of direct red cards by a newly created CONCACAF Independent Review Panel. The regional governing body for football said that in a statement. The statement also said there are three possible outcomes of appeal: a successful appeal when all three members of the panel unanimously decide to overturn the on-field decision of a red card; an unsuccessful appeal where there is no unanimous decision and the direct red card decision is therefore upheld; and an unsuccessful appeal deemed frivolous, in which the three-member panel unanimously decides to uphold the decision and unanimously deem the appeal to be frivolous. In the latter case, the player in question will receive an additional one-match suspension. CONCACAF says the decisions of the review panel will be final and are not subject to further appeal. No other on-field decisions, including yellow cards, can be reviewed by the CONCACAF Independent Panel, and this will only apply for CONCACAF senior, women's and men's competitions. And that's the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Pleasant viewing.